Perfect. So, should we start with reactions?
Yeah.
Oh, that was cool. The cinematography of the whole thing looks really nice. It looked like all the color corrections at the end really matched and all hit one.
Yeah. I appreciate it. That can be a real pain too. I mean, this actually worked out pretty well. I mostly used one camera, which is good, and the cameras matched up. But God, you start to mix cameras around, and it's it's one of those things like it's sort of all about, to me, not being you want things to look good and you want it to look beautiful, but you also don't want to be distracted by the camera. Whether it's like, oh, that looks super different and weird, or it looks amazingly cool. Like you see a shot and it just like looks unbelievable. All of a sudden you're thinking about the camera more than you are whatever's happening. So there's that, finding that balance is kind of tricky. But what did you think of the last people that watched it were not into the subject matter?
Songs were a little odd, but I thought the whole theme of it was pretty unique.
Yeah, it was his life after his wife passed away and stuff. He was still trying to, be artistic and carry on her legacy. She liked to paint and he continued painting. I thought it was cool, touching, if anything.
Yeah. I was talking to the other class about this, how it's, you get invested in a subject or something, you start to make a film, and I was saying to them, I don't really like his art that much. I think his music actually is kind of cool. I've listened to more of it, and it's very, what I put in there was like the most cohesive pieces of what they were playing, and it gets very abstract and I think hard to listen to. But I connected with him, and the more I talked with him and kind of became friends with him, the more I liked him as a subject and a person. So it was tricky. Part of the trick was to try to figure out how to be like, all right, so you may not, it's not like you're making a documentary about the Rolling Stones and everyone's just amped to see the Rolling Stones and they're like, whatever, this music is great. You're trying to make something where you're connecting with the guy as opposed to what he's doing. So that was a trick to it, but it was an interesting process to have to grapple with that.
I thought it pulled it off.
I thought it worked well.
It was artsy.
It was what, artsy?
Yeah.
It's definitely artsy, yeah. I'm with you.
I have a question that I'd like to ask both the students and Adam. And it's with the fact that all of us here are artists. You're in a graphic design class. We have a filmmaker. And sometimes what you're tasked to do as an artist is to create something for somebody else. There's certainly going to be part of you in that, but you're having to tell the story of Philip, and they might be having to design an image that represents a company or a person or something like that. How do each of you go about that, and what's that process look like?
Nikki, you should talk about your logo and how you had an idea for it. Your logo that you designed for that company, how you had one vision for it, and
What average records thing? Well, I mean, that idea came to me in math class. For the logo for my company, I was
the salsa.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wasn't that?
I got paid to do that. That was like a job.
But wasn't it difficult having an idea that you really found to work for it, and then them saying no, we want it?
That was.
You said you were paid for it? Hold on, sorry. You were getting paid for it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, at first I thought she was talking about something else. I did a salsa logo for a guy who's got in the Bitterroot Valley. It's a local salsa company. He makes salsa, and he originally had this logo that had all the elements that he wanted, but it was like, I mean, it looked like it had been made on like the '98 version of Corel Draw. It was a little outdated. And he wanted, a more professional looking logo, and so. He had me do it, and the things he wanted, like he wanted horseshoes on the banners and stuff, and a few other things that just they were specific things that he asked for, but when I put them in, it didn't really work. And so I had to balance what he wanted with what looked good. And in the end, they came out nice. We actually ended up getting rid of the horseshoes, but overall the logo came out nice. It went through a few reiterations, but it came out on the other side looking pretty good.
Yeah, that's a huge. So I do, I make movies for a living. That's what I do. I edit and I shoot, and I do some work for nonprofits and orgs, and I do some work for a little more commercial stuff. I'm not, like, might do some stuff for like Vice or Red Bull, people like that. And it's amazing how much of your job is about the client, right? And so you're an artist and you have all of these ideas, right? And someone says, I want to make a film about, so the last thing I was making was about sustainable fishing, the sustainable fishing program in 3 different countries around the world. And so for the Environmental Defense Fund. So we had all of these ideas about how we were going to do it and approach it, and, we were like, this is what we want to do, this is how we think we're going to do it. Then they came back and they said, here's our outline for the whole thing. And these people are not filmmakers at all, right? They have no experience making films, but it's their brand. They know the project, and they're like, this is what we want to say about the project. And there ends up being this real, it's almost a battle, right? To say, all right, well, do you trust us as filmmakers to tell your story? And does the filmmaker trust you to say, well, we know our business, this is what we need? And but it can be very cool to sort of, there's a lot of times where you end up having to fight back because it's worth it, right? So you've designed this logo for the salsa company. You put in all the elements that they told you to put in, right? You're like, here's the horseshoes, here's the thing, that we got the horses here, and the guys, it's like it's everything you wanted. And then you say, these are the things that aren't working from my perspective, and this is why, right? You're always like, you can always say that and be like, it's your decision, but like, these are the things. But then there becomes the gray area of sometimes you really have to fight for something and say, listen, I really disagree with this. And especially you're getting paid to do something, and you have to kind of just stand up for yourself and say, I know you're paying me, and like, you have the option to say no, or to say, we're not even using you on this job anymore. But like, as an artist, this is how this should be. This really feels like this is how it should be done, and this is how I do it, and this is how I approach it as an artist. And like, you got to take that or leave that. And that's a really hard balance that this piece was I just did it myself, right? I wasn't doing it for, like she said, it's about Philip, so I want to represent him, and I have an obligation to him. But beyond that, no one else can tell me, take this shot out, put this shot in. I could do it however I want it. And that's cool, but it's also cool to be able to work with someone else and say, I'm trying to give you what I think is going to be the best thing for you. And I'm also going to try to be creative and want to be my own artist in this. And then come out at the end and have seems like it happened with you, where both sides are like, yeah, we're happy with this. It's, it suits the needs of the company, but also I got to be artistic in the way that I approach these things. Very interesting dynamic that, like, if you're going to be an artist or a graphic designer, that is like a constant thing. The clients you're going to get, people who are just really think they know what they're talking about, and they don't at all, and figuring out ways of navigating that and still being like, no, this is like how I want to do this, and I'm going to continue to approach it that way and figure out a way to navigate through the situation, so you come out at the end and you're not either super bummed or fired, It's really tricky.
Yeah, that's kind of basically like, actually that's pretty much exactly what happened with the horseshoes. He really wanted them initially. They were like, he got like a banner on top and bottom with it texted, and he wanted them on both of them, but it really crowded it. And I had to I had to do some convincing and show him my other drafts. I made like a draft with the horseshoes, I made a draft with no horseshoes, I made a draft with just horseshoes on like one of the banners, and I really had to like try to convince him that, yeah, hey, from my artistic point of view, I just think it, crowds it, and
yeah,
be better without it. Yeah, came out with everyone being happy in the end.
Right. Well, and it's interesting, you know, it's like, so then if you're doing something just for yourself, then there is that other side of, there's the more pure approach of being true to the subject, you know? So whatever you're doing is a representation of something, right? Whether it's just coming straight internally or another person or a company or a brand, you're trying to represent that thing visually or sonically, whatever it is, and to try to really somehow capture the essence of that within the medium that you are, you know, you're good at. That's the goal, and it's hard to, it's easy to get caught up in a lot of sort of, you know, other people's opinions and how you should be doing this, or even the person, when you're shooting a video, one of the things that I think is cool about it is sometimes you're going to say something about the person that they don't really want to hear, but you're also like, you know what, this is who you are. I'm making this because I like you and I respect you, and I'm also going to say these things about you because it's true, you know, like this is how you are, and we're all complicated. We all have crap that like doesn't look good on film, but if we see that stuff, then everyone's going to feel more like, oh, I have an actual complete picture of this person. They're struggling with this, but they're doing this well. And to kind of continue to be honest in that sense, I think is my goal at least, and it makes the art come alive a lot more, I think. But it can be tricky when they're just like, don't, you know, you're like, don't record this, or, you know, like, don't put that in, and you're like, nah, I'm gonna put that in.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of an English essay I'm doing that's an ongoing second semester project in my English class, where I had to go interview some people in the Bedient Valley, Missoula, artist community subdivision type deal. And the work that they do is that when they're tattoo artists, this is who I interviewed, but it drew a lot of parallels here, because when someone goes to them, they go to them for their artwork. And so they'll have a general idea, but they say, here, put your own flair in it. And if you go to a different guy, he will redraw it entirely different. So that actually drew a lot of parallels, because here's the artist, and you go to them for their particular style, even if you have an idea of what you want to do with whatever artwork you're doing.
Yeah, I think that exactly, and I mean, tattooing is really intense, right? Because it's permanent. You're putting it on someone else's body, and like if they don't like it, you know, you're not at the point where you're like, can you take this horseshoe off? You're like, no, I can't actually. It's but I think so much of it is about trust, right? And it's about establishing trust with the subject, whether it's a person or not, and it's being able to say, I hope you trust me enough that, you know, at least the way I approach it, I don't want to make a film where I'm just like, look at these wackos, they're crazy, they're weird, I don't like them, right? I don't want to make that film that's just like, wow, they're so bizarre and they're weird, like, look, like, let's just watch them. To me, it's always, there's a connection, and I'm interested in the person, and I somehow, I like them, I like the subject, I like something about them. So building up that trust that the subject or the person looks at you and says, I trust that you're doing this because you think I'm interesting, and you think there's something about me, and I'm going to let you explore the pieces that are good or bad or whatever it is, because I've picked you as the artist, or I've allowed you as the artist to do it. The same way it's a tattoo artist, right? You pick them and you say, this is intense, you're going to have your own interpretation, I may disagree with stuff, but I've chosen you as the artist, and like, I'm going to trust that, you know, that what you create is fair, at least.
Can you maybe talk to these guys a little bit about where you got your start and kind of what your education was like? Did you,
Sure.
you know, did you get your? Go ahead.
Well, so I majored in math in college, and I did like a little bit of film. I did some video stuff in school, and but majored in math because I liked it as a school subject a lot. I thought it was really interesting, but had absolutely no desire to do any sort of applied math afterwards. And then I got in touch with this guy through the alumni network I went to Hamilton College, which is in upstate New York, and just found a guy who was doing film in New York City, who had gone there, and I got in touch with him and just started. You know, it's really easy to intern with anybody. You know, I think this is true of most artistic fields, really almost any field. If you're interested and excited and you show up and you're like, hey, I'll work for free or virtually free for a while, and I'm amped to do whatever you want me to do, it's really not hard to get that first step. And then it's just about being diligent and committed. So I just I worked with him, and we had a connection. I liked him, so we ended up working together pretty quickly and collaborating, and I learned a lot from him. So, you know, it's cool. I've sort of found he's kind of a mentor of mine. But everywhere I worked and everyone I've worked with, I've learned a lot from. You know, some people go to art school and some people do go to film school, and they get a lot out of it. But I don't think you need to, as long as you're focused on, you know, if you like someone's art, then, or, you know, if you like what they're making and it resonates with you and feels like you're connected to it, and you tell them that, and you say, yeah, this is the kind of stuff I want to do, then you can learn just as fast from, you know, just working with someone like that. So I kind of started out I just jumped into it. You know, I had no real experience, but I was like, yeah, I want to make films. Can I work with you? And he was like, okay. And then it worked out, you know, and then over the years now, he and I just work together. I mostly shoot and he directs, and we go and do projects together kind of as equals at this point. So it's cool.
How many hours of straight filming did that take?
I shot, it wasn't crazy. I mean, I think I shot over 3 different days, but not full days. And I was thinking about it, I think I probably shot like 8 to 10 hours. Maybe 8 hours of film. So, like, you know, I did an interview. So interviews are always longer than you expect. Because, you know, we did an interview with him that was, you know, maybe 45 minutes long. And then little pieces here and there of some of the audio came from other stuff. And then when I had done some editing, and I was like, oh, I could really use some stuff about this and that. So I went back to kind of fill in some pieces and interviewed him for another hour. Because you start to talk to someone, and, you know, you're not going to go and say, here's what I need you to say. Like, and you just be like, painting is really hard, and then, like, we'll be done. You want it to be whatever, you know, you follow what's interesting. So you let them talk, and it always takes, you know, it's had a couple hours worth of interview stuff. And then, you know, I shot some other scenes that weren't in the film at all of him doing other stuff that just didn't fit, you know. So probably 10 hours of stuff.
What did you edit it on?
Premiere. So yeah, I've switched pretty much. I don't know how much experience. I mean, you said you've done Premiere, but Final Cut used to be pretty standard. But now people are really switching over from that. And Avid is still pretty common. And Avid is it's like old. It's what people have been using for a long time. I've used it a couple times, and it's different and kind of hard to learn. But it's, you know, that's the kind of thing that you can learn. I'm sure this is true. It's like with graphic design, right? If you found a client, you know, say you were doing it really professionally and this was like your only job, and you had experience with Illustrator, and you found someone who was like, we need to make this thing in InDesign, you could, you know, do a couple online tutorials, figure out what you need to figure out, and learn on the fly on the project. And that's what I've done that's how I learned Premiere, is we switched over because some client was like, we want to do this in Premiere, and none of us had used it, and we were like, okay, and just kind of, you know, it's the same thing with the graphic design stuff. They're not that different. It's, you know, the interface is different, but as long as you know overall what you're trying to do, you can switch over, you know, on the fly, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, Premiere and Final Cut, I've definitely noticed that. They're set up a lot, you know, in the same manner.
Yeah. They're very, have you ever used Avid?
I've never used Avid. I worked a lot in Final Cut 7 a few years ago. Then the place that I was doing it at upgraded to 10, and I was working on 10 for about a year. And then I just used, the school here just has Premiere Pro.
Right.
So that's what all I've used. But, you know, they're all programs.
Yeah. Cool. Do any any of you? Oh, I just heard myself
I
real
did,
loudly.
yeah.
Are you guys interested in making documentary stuff? I mean, how much does that seem like something that you would want to do?
It seems like something. Yeah, I try it as a hobby. I don't know if I would do it for a job or anything,
Yeah.
but I think it would be fun.
Best job all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love doing this.
I would love any kind of filmmaking to get paid to do that would be awesome. Anything,
Yeah.
honestly, any kind of digital art in any form.
Yeah.
Way better than having a desk.
Completely agree. I did some graphic design for a while, and I'm just not, like really not trained in it. And I worked for this company that was making like cheese labels and milk labels, and I was designing them, and I kind of didn't know what I was doing. And it was fine, but I also was just like, I'm clearly a hack at this, and like I would make some good stuff, and then not, make some pretty crappy stuff. But it's definitely like a better. I mean, it is the best way to go, I think. Doing, like, I mean, I like the documentary stuff just because you get to, even if you're making, one thing that's really great is sports, I've found, is a really good thing to shoot because you can get paid like it's a commercial job, but you are, if someone is a really big fan of the Giants, they're going to watch a piece on a guy who plays for the Giants, even if it's him, like, cooking at home and it's like it's a way to make something really honest, as opposed to if you're making a piece for Sprite, where like it has to be like, what's Sprite's message? It has to be on brand for Sprite. In sports, as long as it's like, oh well, this guy plays for the New York Rangers, so I'm gonna watch this piece about him ice fishing with his son-in-law, and then you get to make whatever piece you want. You actually really get to, like, there's a lot more freedom in it, which is sort of a cool. I didn't realize that, and I started working with Major League Soccer. And it's really sort of an interesting. I didn't realize how good of a sports is for that, but it turns out it's kind of a cool way to do it.
Awesome. So you guys, we're almost out of time. So let's do one more question for Adam, and then it'll be time for us to go. And I know you guys are getting ready to start your weekend as well.
Yeah. Ask me the best question.
What was your favorite part of like this whole filming session for that video?
I mean, I was talking. I think it was cool that this guy, when I talked to him on the phone initially, there was a lot of hemming and hawing and like, oh, my body, like I'm tired a lot and I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, oh, you have, I was talking about his barn, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd love to shoot in there. And he's like, I don't even really go down there very much. I'm like, it kept being kind of, I'm really tired. I don't know. And then when we got there and started shooting with him, it was like you could tell the fact that we were interested in him, and I was really interested in him, and I wanted to shoot these things. And I was like, you have an upside down piano in your barn that you used to play in New York. Like, we want to go see that. And he was like, all right, well, maybe if you like drove me down there, like, we'll do it. And then we got down there, and you could, for half an hour, he was sitting there. You could tell he was really excited about it, and that's cool to sort of, it's like you are really providing someone with something. You're not just being like, again, it's like not just like, look at this person. You're actually going and saying, I want to connect with you because I think you're interesting. And then he got excited about it. You could tell he was like, yeah, I want to paint for you. Oh, this, like, I talked to him a couple times how he said it really got the juices flowing, and he kind of, it sort of like invigorated him for a while to make more stuff and create. And that is super satisfying. When you're like, oh, just sitting there and you interview someone and you're listening to them and they're like, oh, this person wants to hear what I have to say. And it's actually a pretty cool, the experience is really, the film's cool, editing it is cool, but the experience of doing it and making it is really, that's what's, to me, the most fun. So.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, guys.